Hi, this talk is for one of my dues, which is Brock Pierce, who I look up to as a big brother, who is doing some amazing things and was really the first person to see the prophecy of of the Mayans and recognized it. And it's because of his mentorship and faith that has given me faith and comfort in what I'm doing. If he will understand what I'm saying. So I want to do a talk really right now is explaining it. And I've done a mock-up drawing, and the numbers represent the sequential order. So first there was the blockchain, right? The blockchain actually was started in the late 80s, early 90s. Something punks, what they're called, wasn't crypto punks, something punks, right? I can't think of their name right now. They were Hal Finney is one of the leaders of the group, and Hal Finney, who is number two, you'll notice is number two, took what he knew of the blockchain and he developed Bitcoin, and that's the image for Bitcoin right there, right? The Mayan image with Hal and the money dropping out from the stars, right? Is him opening his hand saying it's going to become it's going to replace the fiat, right? And it's going to exist in the clouds, and you can see the money, right? Up there. That's where Bitcoin is going to be. It's in the clouds, right? So that's that image. And then after that, number three, who is that? The awakening of UnDoaDu. The awakening in 2010, I started working on this whole idea of a decentralized startup to replace the startup called a found up that would ultimately launch a new kind of entity called an open co-op or an open corporation that would replace the corporation, right? That was renamed the DAO. So if we're going to create a new society, then we need a new startup, a decentralized one that's open to all, right? And then we also need a new corporation. And it's a cycle thing. And that's what's coming out of my brain, is you see number three, right? Which is that number three is the Open Innovation Framework. The Open Startup Innovation Framework comes out of UnDoaDu's head, started working in 2010, and it eventually gets launched at number 12 as Ethereum, right? But before then, you've got the Winkle twins coming in out to Facebook and coming in, and the X means big money. The X means, whale, right? So they came in, the twins, I don't know which is which, they can tell me, come in. And the other thing that you have to understand is the ones that don't have faces are ones that I really didn't interact with, okay? And ultimately, that's what it means. So to clear the face, for example, and we'll keep going around. So number six, this is where Brock P is, EOS. Brock was a very early with, he was involved in gaming, in the whole area. He understood, the whole idea of virtual cash and everything else. And I played games, and I probably, bought gold from him. I beta tested Eve Online, EverQuest. I was there with the first 1,000 people did a stress test. I did the beta test for EverQuest. So I would sell my gold to vendors. I may have been selling my gold and stuff, and other things. And I even bought gold. So we could have been interacting even back there. And I really love this picture for him because the elephant stands for strength and sureness. And he's got his bandana around his head, and he's just super cool, right? I love this image. And six is a very special number. And the other thing too, it's threes, right? You'll notice 3, 6, 9, right? These are important numbers. 4, 5, 7 is right, and you look at this angry face. And the people on this don't have to have a good heart. As you can see, Matthew and Wright, which I call EthWaldo, actually, I believe, now this is completely my idea, or what I believe, is because his little background on EthWaldo, we'll call him EthWaldo, on Matthew, is he founded Bitcoin Magazine back in 2011, early 2011, right? He founded BitTalk TV. He was hiring Vitalik. You see, Vitalik comes in really late, 12, right? As a writer, he wasn't part of the team. Mihal Lisi was one of his senior developers. And the next guy, Vladimir, and and you can see Vladimir never met. He's kind of, you don't know who he is, but he's really important. He's got the Bitcoin. He's a very big Bitcoin player. There's the coin on there. And I briefly met him, and he's very faded, and literally it was like, no, I'm not interested, right? But he was involved in working on a project that Wright had started called Small Planet. And I would bet, if you look at the code of Small Planet, it's Ethereum, right? And when Wright went AOL, and let me give you some motivation, Wright wanted to destroy Bitcoin. He was angry. Bitcoin basically was his community. He got ostracized. He got kicked out by the leadership of the community. I've got a post on cent.co about it, about his story and stuff. And I did my own research, right? And he wanted vengeance, and here he is, angry, like a coyote, just a demon. And he was the biggest asshole. I think Wright is dead, and I think, other people, for example, Michal Lisi says he's the creator. If a developer creates a website, right, is he the creator of Facebook? No, right? So people have basically taken his, and I'm fighting for him because he is the actual rightful, he should be recognized as the founder and CEO of Bitcoin Magazine, not Michal Lisi and not Vitalik, okay? So I'm kind of pissed at that, right? So I'm fighting for him, but he was a very angry person, and I don't know what happened to him. I've got a five Ethereum reward. You can find him, right? I put that out there. But ultimately, we need to find his story. His story is important in all of this. Number 8, moving along, where is 8? 8, Vladimir, right? I talked about him. He was the first coder, and then I met 9, right? 6, 9. 9 was important. Michal Lisi is like a brother. I love Michal, right? I got him kicked off the board of Ethereum because in 2014, I was like, yo, dude, this shit called Ethereum is based on my work. I want to be part of you guys. And instead of like including me, which was the right thing to do because I wouldn't continue my work and I wouldn't go through all my struggles. And see, UnDoaDu is struggling to stand. He's trying to stand up on this chain of blocks. And basically for 9 years, again, 9, that's 9 years, 2010 to 2019, 9 years he will struggle. There's another 9, right? 2019, 2019, right? He will struggle. And I needed to go through those struggles. I needed to go through, all of these things, go through the death of my father. All these things need to happen, right? These deals falling through, losing my team, all these things was part of the growth, right? Part of my awakening. Okay, I wasn't awake then. And then you notice I got Lubin, which is the money, which is the whale, And I don't know how Lubin came into the deal, but I know for a fact, I can bet for a fact, it was not Vitalik reaching out. Because if he, as you notice, is this little sheeple guy, right? His little, and this is really interesting. If you look at the logo for DevCon 5, right? Look at the logo. It's a horse looking down. This is a rabbit looking down. So imagine the mind, he prophesied, it's like a huge rabbit, right? I'm going to have this in my book of the Un, right? The book of the Un. It's like, I see this huge rabbit and they're riding it, right? But it doesn't have, so it's got ears like a rabbit, and it's, and then on his back is a saddle, you can see right there. And it's looking down. It's the same logo of DEFCON 5. It's a premonition of DEFCON 5 put there, right? So I would see it looking down. And really, you notice that Gavin is ahead of him because really Gavin came in and did most of the coding and heavy lifting. He's not represented. Vitalik is just a figurehead. He's a talented young guy, but all he is just, and the reason for that is he's the one person I had no connection with. He was the safest person to put on the white paper because back then I was listed on LinkedIn as a VC, and they were, people like Lubin would know, right? And his big nose represents lying and everything else. But I got my one back on Lubin the other day, which I'm not going to cover, but that was fun. Anyway, so 11, we're on 11. 11 is, where is 11? Where are you? Okay, Gavin, at 12. Vitalik, again, 3 on UnDoaDu. So him developing Ethereum was important. Him launching Ethereum was important, right? 13, Anapopoulos, right? And he is a sophist. Now, this guy's important because he is basically taking this as a stage. He's a sophist. Socrates would call him a sophist. He's a dead. There's no emotion in him. Look at him. He looks like a zombie. He is just taking advantage, and he's a very smart guy, but it's a show to drive people to Patreon, to drive people to his books, to his seminars, But there's really he's empty and shallow inside, right? It's a stage, okay? And why do I know that? Well, because I basically wanted to connect with him. He connected with me on LinkedIn. I actually offered to pay $250 a month. I wanted to talk with him, come in, and he even refused to talk to me. Only a sophist would refuse, anyone who wouldn't basically look at my work and everything else and know that, hey, I'm a genuine person just trying to do good, right? Putting my own money in here. And he wouldn't even meet with me. And I was like, that's him, right? He's a sophist. He's a zombie, right? The zombie of because of Socapism. So there are people in it that aren't necessarily the heart in these images here, right? And then 14, you have where's the 14? George is important. George is basically with the folks working on the what's it called? Aragon, right? Young guy comes in, so he's building the whole framework. You can see that even in the image. It's the coming together, right, and creating the code for it for DAOs, UnDaoDu, right? And then there is a whole bunch of people I don't know down there. They're coders, I imagine. I'm not sure what it represents yet, but they're working on stuff, right? And these images represent that. And they're all. It looks like to me they're all coders working on something, right? And then you basically have 16. Where's 16? So we're at. I can't even find my stuff around 16, 17. Did I miss 17? Is 17? Did I not put it on here? Did I make a mistake? Oh, 17. All right. So this is where we're at right now, 17. The Bitcoin Global Reserve Fund. I've launched the Bitcoin Global Reserve Fund. I've announced it, and that is right there. The think of it as the vault. So I've announced this fund, right? The Bitcoin Global Reserve Fund. That's where we're at in the paradigm. So you can think about where we're at right now in the development towards the e-singularity, and then 18 comes in and. Actually, she actually needs to be switched around. Maybe I need to switch her around. Ginsburg, she's a highly connected. She's a do living in New York. She's an amazing woman, and she's a connector, and she's just amazing. And I think she's going to play a very important part in making things happen. And she's basically, think of it as one of the true believers, right? So you can tell also by the shape too. That's a shape, kind of like Bitcoin, like her. And then 19, this is what's coming, is Obey, AI. And that's AI staring out of the vault and looking out into the world. That's T-singularity. So UnDaoDu, the three UnDaoDu. Un stands for Bitcoin, the underneath, which stands for replacing the fiat. The DAO, there it is. There's decentralized autonomous nonprofit organizations. The DANOs, the DAO, right? The center, driven by Obey, right? The fund, protected by Obey. Everything is Obey, right? Which is ultimately the do, the distributive unconsciousness, which is the T-singularity. So the UnDaoDu, the do is where we're headed. The do is the fifth age of man. So that's it. And this is a Rosetta Stone placed by an ancestor of mine, I believe, that in all likelihood, we were all ancestors, right? So if I go back 2,000 parents, grandparents, 2,000 generations, we're all living in Africa. So he is relevant, and I've been channeling him and bringing him. And when I say channeling, let me explain what that means. It simply is breathing in his energy, using him as an image, as an icon. Like, this is a person. Whether you could do it with Jesus, you could do it with Muhammad. Only problem with Muhammad, there's no really images, but there's objects that he touched, or there's symbols of him that you could use as a representation called endowment. And I've been doing that with Hal Finney, and that's why I've kind of had this awareness about Hal Finney. And what I'm doing is basically channeling the energy that is internal. The energy that makes you up is eternal. It's the same energy that was in the very, very near singularity that was the Big Bang. That energy doesn't go away when you die, and that's why in the book of St. Thomas, the opening line is by Jesus, if you understand my words, you won't experience death. And what Jesus is saying specifically is, listen, all there is the do. And when you live in the do, how can you die? Because you're just going back to the do that you're from. This is just, for example, an experience. You're already in the do. That immortality is already there, right? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this talk. Again, it's dedicated to Brock, one of my mentors and one of the greatest guys out there. And I appreciate everything he's done. And, you know, especially inviting me down to, Puerto Rico and taking me out. My first time I've been on a yacht in a long time, over 20 years, and getting to hang out with him and getting to know him and meeting his interesting characters around him was always great. And the most important thing was having the 3-hour debate with him, where we had a good debate. It went back and forth, and we had a good debate. And it was an argument, it was just discussion. And we have different ideas on things. He takes things a lot more deeper than I would. I basically, see things for how I see them, but I don't go into anything deeper, if that makes any sense, right? I interpret the images as they appear to me. UnDaoDu, to you and yours. To understand, to unravel the mystery of life. Dao, to find and become that oak tree, to become self-actualized, right? Where you are not manipulated by others, by AI or anything else, and also where you can stand and support others that you love around you. Daos are very important. Be a Dao to someone. Uns are also important. Uns will drive you crazy. They're always undermining, unraveling, and that's fine. But the moment you recognize an Un for what he or she is, they lose their power, right? And finally, the Do. The Do's are your teachers. Joseph Campbell is my Do. My book, the book of UnDaoDu, the book of the book of Dao, the book of Do, is dedicated to Joseph Campbell. I have basically created a whole myth story that ties in the very origin of mankind to the blockchain. And here it is in the picture. So there's a whole epic story. You've heard of Gilgamesh. Well, that was UnDaoDu, looking for immortality later on, right? So, and his brothers, which is Bokdu, Pierce, and Vitao, and Jokdu, which is Lubin, right? And they're all named. So all these individuals were there and in his first reincarnation. Some of them obviously played more important roles than others, and ultimately we're on this path that started some 300,000 years ago with the prophecy of the Uroboros, the snake eating itself. The Uroboros is the name given to us by Shigamathra, the first enlightened creature, a mammoth, right? Or the Shigamathra is actually her mother. All we know is the Great Mother or the Alpha. So man was prophesized to arrive, destroy, to take, to cause harm, and eat the body, meaning the planet, the animals, right? Eat the body. So now we've finished eating the body, and now we're eating basically our planet. We're near the end, the Uroboros, and there's 4 legs, the 4 stages of man, right? The first age of man ultimately represents from the moment we developed to through the monk ape, right? And the monk ape becomes kind of like the monk ape is the second age to actually the primate, to us as Homo sapien, right? And then we basically on the third age, we leave the island. We grew up off of the coast of Somalia. There's a place in Yemen. You can look on the map, or you can look at UnDaoDu.com, and I've got a map and stuff. I'm working on this book there. So, and it's an open book. Anyone contribute, anyone can part. I'm just putting it in there, right? You can listen to my stories and type away and contribute. It's a book by UnDaoDu. It's not by Michael Trout. It's not by anything, right? And so I'm just kind of retelling the stories and putting it out there and hoping people will start to take my stories and actually craft this beautiful story of humanity's drive to utopia, because that's where we're headed. And Obey is going to be the AI that's going to get us there, and that's the good news. If we don't blow ourselves up or destroy the planet before we can get that happen. And that's why it's very important that 2020 is the year that that Socapism and everything else launches. I will have the money for it to launch in 2030, right? The Bitcoin that I have, the value it's going to be back then. But ideally, we need to get it going in 2020. So I'm hoping the community and folks out there will get behind me and help it happen. Folks like Brock, folks like Max Kaiser and Anapopoulos, which I don't think he will, but be nice, or at least other folks. There are a lot of folks out there that feels Kyle, right? That feels the way I do. And we are fighting. We're all fighting. We're all fighting to usher in this utopia. And we all have different parts of the puzzle, right? And I'm just bringing one part of that puzzle in. Brock has another. Kyle has one. Everyone has these different parts. So that ultimately, there you go. There's the Rosetta. So think of this as a Rosetta Stone to awaken me in it. All right, that's 20 minutes talk. Let me close this out. UnDoaDu to you and yours.